So anyway, this is going to cover like a lot of ground.
Okay.
The first question here goes back to when you first made it big in the States, which was after a long career. I think, Dave, you mentioned something about being in the midst of an identity crisis or something, finding newfound fame hard to handle. Thinking back on that, how do you evaluate that period? How was it difficult for you? Have you passed that, and you still started going through
The period of before this record, is that what
after this record came out and it started to sell, and you guys sort of broke big. You mentioned something about being
Jack.
in the straits and having an identity crisis of some kind.
I swiped the up records.
I think the band was kind of going through an identity crisis in general because we didn't really know where we were at, and we didn't really know how far we had come. We had no real way of understanding. I think we really started to question our intentions in a way, and when we did that, it was very exciting to question our intentions and realize that we remained true to what we had started out trying to do. We all kind of looked at each other and said, well, we've always said that we're not going to do this anymore when it isn't fun anymore. We all kind of decided that we were going to continue on and kind of devoted and dedicated ourselves to the cause, which I think we were kind of going, what's the cause? And it's just to have fun and play music for people. And it was kind of it was a good thing for the band, you know. We kind of analyzed ourselves, and yeah, I mean, there was a pretty dark period there. I mean, we I think decided we wanted something more than we had, although we didn't really know what that was. We decided to leave A&M, which was kind of a bold move on our part because bands like us didn't get a lot of record deals back then, and we didn't know what we were going to do once we left A&M. You know, we didn't know if people would still be interested in us or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it was a real healthy thing, but I think that's what everybody says about depression or whatever, you know. But
Difficult moves.
it's good
too.
to step back from it sometimes and kind of go, what is this all about?
So let me get the facts straight then. There were like maybe two difficult periods. Once when you decided to leave A&M, and then once after you had made the new record on the new label, and then things started to happen.
Well, I think that after the last A&M record came out, I would think that was followed by a very great orientation as to what was happening to us and what was happening to music and what the record industry was all about. So I think that, I mean, personally, you know, I can talk about that, but it's kind of makes me uncomfortable to talk about my own personal psychosis, you know. But, you know, I'm pretty manic in general, and I go up and down a lot, and I have some pretty dark days and stuff, but so does everybody.
Especially when you're in England.
There was something happening in England.
No, there's dark days in England.
でなんとかあまりはっきりしないんだけども、どちらかというとそのブレイクした直後の理由がお願いします。
Okay.
こういうバンドはね、まあそう簡単に席にするバンドじゃないし、
I get it.
その前の
You did? No, just kind of like coughing all that shit.
それでもまだ確認してない。How about when fame came, when success came, when things started overwhelming you at that time? Is that you're talking about reevaluating what you want to
I
achieve?
don't think that success is overwhelming us at all because we're in a way we're outside of acknowledging or knowing what success is because we're just still doing the same thing that we've set out to do. So it's not really that overwhelming. The only overwhelming thing is that you get asked to do more and more, and you have more and more work to do, and you get less and less time to yourself, and that gets to be a little overwhelming. The success part of it, I mean, having people come to your shows and having your records be sold, and I don't think that's overwhelming at all. It's just a matter of trying to deal with your time that gets a little more taken away from you.
When you say you have to work hard, like what do you mean? Get to
A lot more interviews, and like if we weren't successful, we'd have a complete day off today. You know, we wouldn't be doing any interviews or photo shoots or anything like that.
Right.
I mean, it's just
I
like
wouldn't be here.
right.
Yeah. period.
Right. We'll be sitting at home and our, dreaming up a new way to do something, or mow the lawn or whatever. So
It's been
it's kind of hard to see it because you're so inside it. That its success is only in how much work you have to do. I mean, it's a great problem to have, having way too much work. But it still can. That's to me is what success means, is you have more work than you've ever had in your life, and continue to do the things you've always done, but you have more work, more stuff to do.
ブレーキしてしまえば仕事の量がもっと増える、そのぐらいの、実感がないっていうかね、仕事が増えたなっていうその程度で、それはでも狙ってたんですし、それは納得してる。じゃあ、10年以上もずっとライブを続けてきたわけですけど、その時はもう 100% ブレイクしてると思っていたのか、もうこうやって地道に活動していくのもいいかなと思っていたのか、どうだったでしょうか。Years on the road before big time success finally came. Was it a matter of just sort of enjoying yourself at the level you were at, or did you think that one day the grab the brass ring and your ship's going to come in, that kind of thing?
Well, it's kind of a process is the greatest reward to doing what you're doing rather than the end result, and that's somewhat true.
If we ever get to Easy Street, we just came for the ride.
Right, exactly, right.
That's what you're trying to say there.
What you were trying to say there is what I just said. It's a very, very old saying, Dave. It's a Zen thing, dude.
I think that if you start out in a punk rock band, you don't really have any high aspirations, and I think we all knew that we really enjoyed making music, and I think that we all knew that it was supposed to be tough, and you're supposed to be a starving artist per se to a degree, and I think that we found a modus operandi that was just like hanging by a shoestring the whole time, but we still got to play the shows and enjoy it and do what we set out to do, which was to get a gig at a shitty little pub, and as long as we continue to do that, that's kind of where the gratification is in it, but it's hard to find the real redemption and when people ask you about what your status, you kind of, you're only really as good as the music you make, and you only want to make music that's better, and no matter what happens on this record, it's not going to help me make the next record, and I know what I'm capable of as a player and a writer, and that's where my challenge and my struggle is. So I think all this stuff about success is kind of irrelevant to us in a way, and we've always been traveling and working and trying to get gigs, and it's nice to have gigs, because that's what we want. Otherwise, though, you're just sort of toiling in the trenches.
It's also nice to get that reward at the end of the day, too. It's nice to get that fish tossed to you after you go for so long.
What reward is that?
Brass ring.
Fame and fortune.
It's nice to get a little reward from what you've been doing. It's kind of a little way of saying, having a little success is kind of a way of saying what you've been doing for all these years, has meant something in a way. There's some of that involved in it. But I think that this band is based on the process, is the reward in itself. Just because that's when we started out.
Playing a good gig is pretty satisfying. Playing a bad gig really makes you wonder what you've just been doing for the last 10 years.
Pretty fucking agonizing.
Are there any bad gigs still? At this point, solid, consistent.
Trying to raise yourself to a certain level, and sometimes you just don't reach that certain level for whatever reason or whatever it is, and when you don't reach that certain level, there's lack of satisfaction, and anytime you go out on a stage, you're trying to seek that satisfaction, of
Jack.
Playing the best way you possibly can, and sometimes you don't reach that, and that's it's no fun, you know. It's, I mean, it sucks basically. God damn it! I really want to steal that jacket.
Well,
Okay.
would you wait till we open the fucking beers, for Christ's sake?
Why don't you tie it to your belt or
Now,
something?
if I was pulling a car, I never even would have pulled that out of my phone.
まあそもそもパンのやるっていうやつはまず当てようっていうまず思いはしないでしょ。その一つはまあこういうまあ別に活躍でも仕事さえあればいいと思うわけ。まあちょっと中で仕事が悩みできる状況にさえ記録ができたらそれでいいかなとしてるし、あとはまあその自信として向上していく。ただもう今はもうブレイクしてお金も入ってくるからいいよその前の時期は非常にやっぱりヘビーで辛い仕事だったと思うんですけどもうこんなしんどいことはやめてしまおうとちょっとでもことの方が皆さんから一人でした。So you talked about like getting there being the reward with the road along the way there, but there must have been like ups and downs during that period of time before like things got a little bit easier. You had to go out and slog it out on the road all the time. You must have.
Every day
Sure, you know.
is a journey into the abyss when you're traveling in sort of unknown territory. I mean, you get lonely on the road and stuff, things like that. I mean, what's worse than lonely? You know, what's worse than being lonely? I don't know, but you know, you can look back at all those days now very romantically and go, "Oh, it was really cool when we didn't have any food and we had to sleep on people's floors and
It's
all
not
that sort
cool.
of thing." But it's a bitch, you know. And there's been a lot of struggling, you know.
It's,
But
you know,
it's builds character, you know. That's
In
what
terms-
they say about it.
you know, your ups and downs are, you know, you go out on one tour and you release a record and go out on one tour and you draw 500 people. The next time you go back, you draw 300 people. That's it's a little disheartening sometimes, you know. And sometimes we had our best shows when we drew 100 people. Last time we drew 500 people, you know. Just to prove, I think, somewhat to prove that we could do it. You know, it didn't matter who was there, just do it. That's the end of the sentence.
Okay, but I mean, it sounds very depressing though. This is hardly a romantic vision you're conjuring up here of life on the road.
Isn't this glamorous?
Yeah, this is not.
Isn't this glamorous?
This is not glamour. Getting back to the second.
Jaja, how do you feel?
Getting back to the second part of his question, there. Isn't there like don't you come to a point where you just want to sort of chuck it all away and say this sucks? I'm not going to do this
Every
anymore."
day, I think that happens to a lot of
You know,
people.
but what are the alternatives?
But
Well, I mean, there's a lot of alternatives. Going back
like
to
what?
go
Yeah,
back
like
to Tuna
what?
Fish, Wisconsin. Get
Right.
that
Yeah,
membership
right.
At the
So-
McDonald's,
so-
at the McDonald's after all.
Okay,
Ryan
right.
can
so
go back to his janitor job, and
Dave
I
can go back to his cook's
my
job or
cook's
his lawn
job,
care
and,
job.
And when you put it in that perspective, it's a pretty great way to like have a life. But
Right,
it's
right.
but nobody told us it was going to be easy, and I don't think we ever expected it to be.
And we
easy.
didn't start out for it to be easy. You know, that's not the premise at all.
But I mean, you talk about having nothing to go back to. At the same time, I guess there's also a musical vision you're trying to strive for, strive to realize. There's something in your head that you want. Yeah.
and it's very disillusioning when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I think I can look at every single one of our records and go that they keep getting better, and I think that's progress that you can chart somehow or another. And you can go, we're getting better at what we do, and you know, we are more consistent than we used to be in our gigs. But I mean, it's.
Doesn't help when you have to suck your
Writing
show.
and playing music is a pretty weird way to make a living. You know, I mean, it's erratic and it's really can be really sparse at times as far as having something to depend on. There's no security in it really. No matter how good you do, you could easily be yesterday's news. So there's always that too. You're always kind of walking on a tightrope.
まあかなり暗いシャツですよ。
Given
限りなく暗いよ。
lucky to be here. I just want to help you.
ああ、そう。例えば座りとか
Well, probably cliches and
それであっても客がつまらない。今の華やかな生活。
Yeah, me too. I like you.
暗い日があったんだけど、まあそれとまた同時に、じゃあそれやってなかったらどうす
They
る？
might have their own cliche, but
田舎
it's
に
the
帰って
same thing.
Right. Oh, right.
掃除のおじさんやるから。フードレストランで
Facebook.
他にそのどこの職
I think we're good for the
で
moment.
また同時に絶対にこうやりたいっていうのがあるから
Heroin. Heroin would be good
実
though.
現させたいっていう夢がそういう夢の中に伝えて
Heroin and prostitutes.
その長い、ライブその10年以上のライブサーキットの中で、出会ったとんでもない体験とか今でも覚えてるようなエピソードとかそういうのがあれば教えてほしい。He wants to know a little bit more about life, the tougher side of life on the road. On the one like that. Can you remember something more choice moments?
Well, when you're sitting at the end of the gig and 150 people have come to see you, you gotten paid $110, and that pays for food and your gas to the next town, and you don't have any place to stay. You know, I mean that's a pretty desperate situation, trying to look for
You
somebody's
don't
house to
know
stay at.
anybody, and it's
You know, and
pretty
everybody
destitute.
hated you, so you don't, have anywhere to stay. You know, I mean, this kind of gets to be a desperate situation, but we always managed to get another extra 12-pack out of the promoter and laugh it off.
I can remember a couple of stories, kind of me and Grant oriented. One was we were sitting at a truck stop, trying to get hot water for the ramen noodles. None of us could figure out how to do it, and somehow Grant managed to come back with a bowl of ramen. And we were all watching him eat these ramen noodles and thinking, you just gotta be, hungry enough to figure out how to get fucking hot water, I guess, It was
I
pretty
didn't even
easy.
notice you guys were fucking. I remember when that was. It was in Texas.
And then there was another story where me and Grant were driving through the desert very late at night.
Oh, right.
And there was about 6 people in a little Chevy van. And we were Dodge, excuse me, Dodge, important detail.
Yeah, very, very important detail.
And we were coming up with some big scheme about something, and
We
everybody.
were talking about Carl's sitcom.
Yeah, right. Carl was going to have this TV show.
We were
right?
writing a sitcom
So
for
we were
Carl.
writing
We were driving.
material for Carl's,
I was driving.
Carl's TV show, and
Dave
we were
was
getting
writing it down.
pretty involved in Carl's material. And the other guys were sleeping in the van. They weren't really sleeping.
Or pretending to be.
They were pretending.
They were
to be
listening to this great sitcom.
And
game
they
we
were
writing.
they were noticing in our conversation that every now and then Grant would go, "Well, how's that gas gauge look?" And I'd go, "Well, it looks pretty low. Should we stop?" And then we'd go by a gas station and go, "There'll be another one." And they're all pretending to be asleep in the van, and like an hour passes by, and it's like, "Well, I haven't seen a gas station yet, Grant."
No.
So
No
we
gas
ran out of
station.
gas in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. And and we kind of could hear a little bit of snickering coming from the back, but everybody else was sleeping because they weren't going to deal with it. So me and Grant had to hitchhike, get a trucker to pick us up, and the desert was kind of cold that night. And this guy at the gas station wouldn't let us in because he didn't trust us. So here's me and Grant with a gas can in the middle of fucking absolute nowhere, desert somewhere. Got a couple truckers to pick us up and drive us back after about 3.5 hours or so. And wasn't fun.
Got back, put the gas in the truck, drove to the gas station, and they had drank the last 3
and there was
beers.
3 beers left. And
Filled the car
we
up,
knew they weren't sleeping because they drank the last beer while we were gone.
and their excuse was, "We heard coyotes howling."
Well, that from the road like that was toughening you up.
Well, I mean, what toughened you up? It just makes you
I
realize
think
what
that
an idiot you are. Is what it basically does.
I think that we have a certain sense of we know how bad it can get, which kind of makes us stronger in a way because we know exactly how miserable it can be to be. We know the very worst sides of being in a rock band, which is good. I think it's good that we know how people have to struggle to do this. And it makes you appreciate young bands more. because
what people have to go through to get their
I mean,
fucking
we've
art
had the
out.
experience to watch bands come out with their first records and sell 5 million copies and just like blow by us and like, go, wow, how did that happen? You know, it's like what builds their experience and do they have any appreciation for what it sometimes takes to just be a surviving functional rock band? You know, it's not about being rock stars or anything like that. It's just being able to afford to make music for people.
When you see something like that, you must sort of rationalize it by thinking, well, it must be the right place, right time to happen. Coincidence in their case.
Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't take away from the other band's quality either,
No.
because they didn't sort of suffer like we did. I mean, you don't have to suffer to be great, you know. But sometimes if you endure and you believe in what you do, people will pay attention sooner or later. You know?
Yeah, I mean, by the same token, I think it's great to see a band like NRBQ who never really had any success, but they're this like incredible band because they played together for so long. You know?
エピソードとか2つもそれはひどい目になかったまあそれなりにひどい目になったともしその10年以上のライブ経験がなくて去年このメンバーでバンドを組んだとしてもこうやってブレイクしたと思いますか Very hypothetical question. If you guys had gotten together for the first time last year, same guys, without benefit of 8 or 9 years on the road or 10 years or whatever it is behind you, had you gotten together for the first time last year, you think you would have had the same degree of success? It's a very
No, I don't. Well, I mean, if we did,
I think
I don't think we would have
if
known
we
how to
had-
deal with it. First of all, I don't think we would have known how to deal with success at all.
How about like the quality of the music?
We would have just gone.
I think it would depend on what we would have been doing previous to that. I mean, because I think that as far as the material is concerned, and as far as the musicianship of the band is concerned, I use those quotes very affectionately.
I had Swai on that one.
You know, I mean, it's really been an incredible growing process, you know, and I can say I never could have written this record if I didn't write the 7 records that came before it, you know, and I don't think the band ever could have played this record if, you know, so I think there's a certain element of you know, it never could have happened without, you know, you can't just be an adult, you had to be a kid first, you know, and you have to go through a growing process, and I think, and that may be one of the unique things in the nature of this crew.
I couldn't imagine knowing anybody in this band.
It'd be cool though. I mean, it'd be great. I think we were all 18, put this record out, and we're like,
Dave, we would fucking self-destruct. We would just go
Yeah,
nuts.
well.
What do you think the younger kids have?
Well, I think one of the reasons, I mean, well, one of the things that's helped me deal with having some limited success we've had in the past, and it's always been a growing thing, is knowing what we did in the you know, previous to having the success we had, you know, coming along, and gradually taking the steps. You know, I mean, I know personally that I probably would have gone bonkers. I mean, it's got to be so weird for bands that, you know, put their first or second record out and they're these massive stars. How do you carry on after that? You know, you know, the building process of it builds. You know, you just realize what it means to you and where you come from and who you're dealing with and what the whole process really is. And I mean,
we definitely feel a certain sense of having paid our dues, I think.
Your feet are firmly on the ground ever since
as firmly as they've ever
We
been.
know the ups and downs, we've been through it, done it, seen it, you know, we've been there. It doesn't, you know, things don't freak us out as much because we're used to the erratic nature of everything. What was it? You said
ソウルアサイラムの音楽はデビューのそうか使い方変わってます
freaked out before, and
ね。
then
ツアーを
freaked
や
out
っ
again.
ツアーをやったからこそ変わったんでしょうか。あんま関係ない。
It just happens.
There have been quite a few changes, you know, in the music of the band, especially from the early days. Is that the result of working on the road, working live a lot, touring changes?
Musical changes?
Yeah.
I think it has to do with individual musicians being individual musicians, and Dave
What's that
serve
all about?
serve
Pulse-
because I can't speak for writing. Is what I'm saying.
Um,
Serve into your court. There,
What were we talking about?
Talking about the changes.
the
and-
changes, musical changes
Oh.
of the band.
Well, is it
Well,
touring?
I think as players, you reach a certain point where you go, well, I don't, I have a function to fulfill it in a rock band, and I am not Miles Davis, and I never will be, and therefore I should concentrate on what Dave Pirner does, And I think there's that part of it, and I think that you learn a lot from just understanding the power of music and what works, and I think we went through a real period where we start to really understand simplicity in a real organic, communicative sort of a way. 3 good notes are always better than 20 bad ones.
Kenny G proved that many times.
And you can, and you can see how music communicates to people, and you can see that people don't always want to be intellectually challenged. They just want somebody to say something to them that they understand, which is, usually C, G, and D instead of, 50 diminished chords or whatever, And you learn how to communicate as a group, and you learn what not the limits, but where you have to come from. Your attitude has to be something of something real, I think, and something that's not pretentious and that's not, over intellectualizing an eight note scale and saying things that are kind of having an honest conversation and instead of trying to use 25-cent words to blow people away with all the time, whatever. So
Well, certainly what you talk about is reaching a broader base. Maybe if you do concentrate on the 50 diminished chords and the larger words, maybe you're going to reach a smaller, more devoted base. So maybe you've learned accessibility, how to hit that sort of sweet spot, drive the message
I think
across.
that I've learned that what music means to me is what I want to communicate to other people, and the things in music that I enjoy are more often than not, it's very folk oriented. There's a real folk ethic involved in it, where it's people making music for people. It's not like highbrow stuff. It's like punk rock and Woody Guthrie and Robert Johnson and whoever. There's a certain ethic of layman's terms going on there that I think I've always been affected by, whether or not I admitted it in the past. I think it's always been what I like about music, is that it's a situation of celebrating an emotion. It's not that convoluted in the intellect and all that stuff.
We ventured off from those other areas too.
腕っぽいんですよ。家に CD プレイヤーのテレビがあって、音楽に関しても一切見ないっていう話を聞いたことがあるんですけど。
Dave, you heard that you don't have a CD player or a TV at home, indulge in any sort of...
No, I was a big holdout for the CD era. And I never actually bought one.
Oh, you're just talking about, it's not music, but just CDs, just digitized music.
Yeah,
You
like,
have-
and I never had a TV in my house. I just didn't want one. I didn't want to be around a television. But no, I have a huge record collection.
Mhm.
So I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that's anything other than just kind of being put off by the whole technology side of things. And trying to keep things as if I don't have a TV staring at me all the time, I'm going to pick that book up and start reading it, sort of thing. If I don't have a synthesizer, I'll just depend on my acoustic guitar instead. And if I don't, CD thing, I just think vinyl sounds better, and I like those big discs. That's very old-fashioned in a way. I'm very attached to my record collection, and I like the whole idea of a 12
そうなんだな、やっぱりアナログ版に対して愛着というか、デジタル、テレビあえてもないから、テレビがあると、もう言わないし、今の時代のサッカースペクターやなくて、ヒーローないから、そのままダメだ。じゃあ、
I gotta get there.
最後に。
When I made how much is the storage? Excuse me, my
もしも
girlfriend's got a CD player.
今の割とお金のある生活のままでスパッと音楽をやめるか、それとも昔の貧乏な暮らしに戻って音楽を続けるか。
その前提はその前提
もしもどっちか選ぶって言われて、今の金持ちのままでスパッと音楽をやめて優雅に暮らすか、それとも昔の貧乏な状態に戻って音楽をまた育ちながら続けるか、どっちかしか選べないとしたらどっちを選びますか。
今その優雅な暮らしを続けて、でそれは音楽なしで、
確かに。
あるいは音楽がある貧乏な暮らし。One last question here. Wondering what if you again hypothetical question, sorry, but if you had a choice between going
This is a
to
hypothetical.
we're all hypothetical beings here.
Yeah, it is.
None of us exist.
Like he said, it is a hypothetical life.
Anyway, if you let's say you had one of two choices, you could either take the fame and fortune you have now and stop playing music, or stick with music and go back to being poor, which would you choose? I guess it's a choice between affluence and music. If you had to choose between which would you choose?
I'll
Fuck
answer
that. Fuck that question. I mean,
Is that a I don't have to choose so I won't sort of
Is that a
answer
C,
or
no,
what?
the above?
yeah, kind of, basically. I really like the life that I chose for myself. I'm gonna answer this in a hypothetical answer too. I like the life that I chose for myself, and it was very hypothetical, based on, you know, the percentage of success that somebody who chooses the life that I have has. So I'm glad that the life that I've eked out for myself has worked out the way that my dreams, like, I thought they could. That were my dreams. So, you know, that's it.
Yeah, right. Well, in other words, the
Well,
question is
that's not
irrelevant.
an answer.
Yeah, it is because it's a hypothetical answer.
Right.
Answer
I
with
don't
a
think it's a
hypothetical answer.
hypothetical question at all. I would definitely give up everything to keep doing music. If somebody told me I couldn't do music anymore, I would rather be dead. It's as simple as that for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and money has never been a part of it. And I just want to make music. So,
Makes sense. That's what it is. Okay, I think it's all good. Thanks, man.
thanks, man.
We'll get some photos now and then get out of your hair.
All right.
All right. So how'd you end up with this gig?
I was a Japanese major back in college, and so I've been here about
Mr. Harris?
14 years.
Harris? Oh my God, Jack from I have talked to you like a million times on the first time seeing you.
Talked to me a million times.
Yeah. Well, like Bruce Springsteen interview,
Uh-huh.
you know, that was the beginning, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And,
Ah.
not the Springsteen, but happened to be the manager, John Lando.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Yeah.
ジョンさんもいつもごめんの中だけどあれですけども、お世話になってます。
写真の部分に移動する方は何て言うんですか。
Oh, so we'll get the pictures right over here.
Okay. Of us two? Just us two? Or?
Yeah, just two. I'll start.
メンバーダメなんですよ。2人で。
Yeah, just two.
どっちかから2人で。
あ、ないですよ。
So you do other stuff? Or just this magazine?
Yeah, you know what? I've been doing
Are you like freelance?
Yeah, freelance. So I've been doing this for about 13 years now. Yeah, we do a lot of things.
You like it over here? Yeah. What do you like best about it?
笑いますよ、それとも。
I just like everything. I mean, I really like life here. I like just having different stuff, coming out every day. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, but you kind of OD on life here. It's too easy. Everything's sort of under the sunshine and we're happy and nice.
What do you think we should do?
Too.
Seriously, look at.
I kind of get out at night.
Sometimes just to relax.
Get out of.
Get out at night, get into town.
There's
I
like
can't-
happening.
Yeah.
Nightclub things
Tell
going
people
on.
that I can't smoke just to get
It
in.
seemed to. It's like the locals kind of like we don't really party. They kind of vibe.
Well, it's a very business-oriented company. But the thing about Sony is they're way on your hand and foot.
Okay.
You say, you know, you want to get out there and meet the locals,
Why
man.
don't you do
What's
that?
this like really
Get
freaky
close.
tourist, non-tourist
Hey,
attraction?
Dave?
Good question. Well, I would just say meet the people, the locals.
Dude, I don't speak Japanese.
You don't have to. A lot of people are speaking English.
Sorry.